Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Therapeutic Thursday. I'm joined by Joshua, who you all know, I'm sure, and maybe by now you begin to know who I am. My name is John Quick. I'm a fellow aortic survivor, having had a type A dissection out of the blue and emergency open heart surgery for that with a replacement aortic valve and an aortic prosthesis. And then a few weeks after that, having a type B dissection, which runs all the way down into my legs. And I've lived with that for the last, now it's over 18 years. So one of the reasons that I'm here is that. And then the other reason is that as a result of this injury, I did a lot of rethinking and rejigging of my life and started to study and train in psychology, which I'd always been interested in, started doing courses, gaining qualifications, and gradually been working in that field since. And obviously, or not obviously, but hopefully I can bring a kind of relevance to some of the issues that we face with this condition, such as PTSD, such as tiredness, such as depression. And today, following a conversation with a friend, a topic I wanted to maybe focus on was the idea of alone and aloneness. Now, the word tends to have a kind of negative connotation. Yes, maybe we can all enjoy being alone, but aloneness can kind of come with a certain heaviness. The interesting thing about the word is going back into kind of Old English, and I've done a bit of research on this. It's made up of two words, which is all and one. So two words, one and all. So my kind of theme, where I'm going to try and go with this, is the idea that even though we are alone, we are enough, and that we are all and one in ourselves. And that is very obviously the fact that we are born alone and we die alone. But again, that comes loaded with so much fear. And I think this is particularly relevant to this condition, that we can feel very alone with this condition, perhaps losing sight of the fact, and forgive me, by the way, if I look down because I made some notes for this, we lose sight of the fact that we have it in ourselves and we must find it in ourselves to be all and one, to be enough for ourselves, so that we don't overdrift into kind of codependency. We don't overdrift into kind of traumatic attachment. One of the issues with this condition is it's very easy to dwell on the fact of like, I wish this hadn't happened to me. I feel very alone with this. And my strategy is that one of the things we have to do is absolutely work on accepting the reality of this, because otherwise we just kind of add that to our fear and life goes by. The more we can accept the reality of this, we can kind of develop resilience and self-reliance, which is crucial to this condition. And what we do is we don't then waste time kind of on dragging energy, which is lamenting or over lamenting the fact that we have the condition, because we have it. It's not going away. Yes, hard though it may be, the rumination of, oh, what was I like before this, or I wish this hadn't ever happened to me, is not really going to take us anywhere at all. Well, it's not going to take us anywhere at all. It's just going to gradually bring us down. And it's of no use to you. So one of the perhaps human dilemmas is actually facing our individuality. And we live in a society which places great weight on having relationships, great weight on being social. But one of the things that can happen to us with this condition is it can take a kind of cost to our ability to be social, to be able to face up. We have to face up in a very brutal way to our own individuality and that aloneness. So what I'm trying to do here, and hopefully it'll be there in some of the questions and some of the things we talk about, is work on this idea of the all one, that I am enough within myself. So that's my little topic for today. How does that sound to you, Joshua?
Let me unmute here. That sounds great. Let's start off by saying hello, Tom, Molly, Natalie.
Hi to everybody.
Did you have feelings of isolation in the early stages of your disease?
I think I did, yes. I always remember lying in hospital, in the night I couldn't sleep because my dissection uh, wasn't long after my father had passed away, and he had forgotten the name of the heart condition now. Well, anyway, he'd had a kind of heart condition which was old age related, but in my slightly kind of damaged state, then I was kind of convinced that if I went to sleep, I would go the same way.
Mm.
So I remember feeling very kind of alone, playing songs as well, which and any number of CDs were brought to me by people in the hospital, and playing these really kind of sad songs and having a good old cry there in the middle of the night. But also it's that fact of like it's such a kind of axe to our lives that how can we possibly explain to somebody how it feels? Plus there's that tension of how much can we go on about it without beginning to sound boring, or without it becoming a strain on others, and caretakers having to take kind of the weight of that. And of course, let's not forget that not everybody has a caregiver.
Mm.
There are plenty of people out there who need to struggle through this on their own. But coping with those feelings of isolation are difficult, and you can't just snap your fingers and say, I'm not going to feel isolated, because also one of the physical impacts, or one of many of the physical impacts of this condition, of course, is going to lead us to potentially becoming more isolated. We can feel more tired. We maybe aren't working anymore, or we maybe have a long time off from work. We need to rest a lot. We maybe don't feel very talkative. We maybe feel lost to ourselves, all of which are kind of isolating in their emotional kind of state.
Mm. Molly Thomas says, one is enough. I like that thought. And Natalie says, I love this reframing. It removes us of the poor me vibe and pushes us to take an active part in our healing. And Michael Smith says, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael. Yeah, that's thank you for those points. And a great point, Natalie, yes, that it is about a kind of reframing, because it's all about perception, isn't it? Because how we take that word alone, and it's everything in what we read into that. We can take it towards sadness, or we can take it towards, no, this is a reality. I'm essentially alone, all one, like every other single human being on this planet, and it's what I do with that, and it's the kind of resilience that I build around that.
Natalie says, when I feel a blow, I tend to give myself a 24-hour, in quotes, gray dark pass to give it all give into the boo-hoo-hoo. Then I push myself to shift.
Natalie, you have all the techniques. I'm impressed every single time. You should be doing this. I think I'm going to have to talk to you. Yeah, but that's a nice strategy too. Yes, we have to be self-forgiving as well, There's nothing wrong with feeling yeah, letting it out. That is part of the ups and downs of also being human, whether we have this condition or not. It's impossible to always be in that positive mood vibe state.
And it is to note that Natalie is still quite early in post dissection. I think she's still in her first year and a half, and so the big swings are still there, and every twinge is an alarm. You know?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. But I think part of the point here is the more one can face that reality of alone but all one, the more the resilience comes. And that is so key to this because we can take so much confidence from that resilience. You can feel better about life because what is the other side of resilience has a lot of fear in it of not being able to cope, and it's not a good feeling. You're smiling, Joshua.
She says, "It doesn't mean I'm good at it. I always apply the tricks, but I try." And yeah,
Yeah.
so one of the things in the support groups that I tell to the new members is, in those early stages, you have to give yourself that grace, right? That this is new for you, and the change is going to be massive. But if you were taking care of somebody else and they were trying to do more than they should be doing, you would be telling them, "Relax, sit down. I'll get that for you."
Mm,
And we don't do that kind of thing for ourselves. We push ourselves. So then that
yeah.
creates
Mm,
frustration. Yeah.
yeah. So, well, I'm waiting for these messages to pour in. Um,
Yeah.
I I think you make a very interesting point about the transitions as one goes through this with time. Undoubtedly, time does heal, and I noticed a huge difference with being 18 years out to how I was in the early stages. And you're so right, every twinge and every pain has one afraid. Is this going to happen again? Me getting up out of a chair. I think I've mentioned this before. I every time I got out of the chair, I think, oh, might it tear again?
Mm.
And it's understandable, but of course we all know that's no way to live. That's no fun.
Mm-mm.
So, but I'm not going to pretend that if, say, for example, one gets older as well, that I've been doing quite a lot of kind of house changes and everything at the moment, and I'm kind of have those moments where particularly for me, if I do too much that is vigorous, my chest seems to tighten up, and then that doesn't feel good. Um, it's very hard for me to pin down actually what's happening there, but it's not a pleasant feeling, and of course the fear comes. Yeah,
Yeah.
but we have to then come down into the moment and accept it, just be patient, just wait it out, and not lose sight of the overall goal.
Yeah. Molly says resilience must come from within. Strength also.
Yes, absolutely.
Are there methods for kind of like behavioral patterns to reinforce positive feedback to build confidence and resilience?
I actually think basic things like movement are really good. Yes, whether that be walking, if you can manage some dancing, doing some dancing, trying to build up the core strength a little bit more. I've said this before, getting down on if you are a mat, if you have one, doing some basic exercises, doing those breathing exercises that I talked about last week. They are so good and they are so calming. And just getting in touch when one's lying down like that of all the things that the body is doing, which are automatic, which we take for granted. We don't sort of thank the body enough for all of this doing, like our breathing. It's just happening, isn't it? We're
Mm-hmm.
not going, I'm going to breathe now, or I'm going to walk across the room, put one foot in front of the other. We do all of those kind of things automatically. But if we're not careful, we focus on the things that aren't going so well.
Mm. And so more of an active role of rebuilding. I see.
Definitely.
Yeah, I
Yes.
see. Okay. And
And I think,
go ahead.
sorry, no, only that, again, as I said last week, I'm cautious to generalize because I might be talking to people who are 10 years out, I might be talking to people who are less than 1 year out. So, it's all very well to say, exercise and do this, but obviously everyone's different and it depends on your level of pain. And I think we all need a specific plan. And if you can get one of those, or you can work on having one, that's ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, with movement and exercise, we get the dopamine hit as well. We feel good about that. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a great believer in swimming as well. That was a huge part of my rehab. I'm never a great one for getting in the cold swimming pool at the beginning, but my word, do I feel great afterwards. And it's so gentle swimming, you're not going to pull a muscle. And you're horizontal, which is less work for the heart as well.
On the channel, we feature Jack Crow, Aortic Athletes. He's one of the founders of the Facebook page. And, he's very into fitness. He was always very into fitness. And so after he had his dissection and when he was talking to his surgeon, he was just like, what do I do? And, if I recall correctly, his surgeon said something along the lines of, listen, today you're going to walk for 2 minutes. Tomorrow you're going to walk for 4 minutes. The day after you're going to walk for 8 minutes. And start slow, work slow, no rushing, no anything. And so, he's taken that and, that's one of their mottos, like, go slow, but go, or something like that. I can't remember.
And don't rush.
Yeah, no rushing. Oh, goodness gracious. The amount of people that go back to work so early makes me nervous. Nervous.
Well, I think I've said this already. Well, the thing that really sticks in my mind is my surgeon and, initial cardiologist in London saying to me, if there's one thing I don't want you to do from now on in your life is don't rush for anybody. Easier said than done, of course.
If
one is getting to an airport and there's a flight or something like that. But don't we all find that stressful, trying to get to the gate on time or something in hurrying? It's not good. I remember that happening to me quite early on. Maybe 1-2 years out, having to rush to an airport through the airport in Spain, and obsessively taking my pulse and things like that, worrying about it. So yeah, but in a way, more haste, less speed is a great metaphor for life anyway. Not rushing.
Yeah.
To be considered, to take one's time.
Yeah. Molly says movement and exercise also builds confidence. Michael Smith says 11 years out and I still have a disconnect between what I think I can do and what I can actually accomplish.
Yeah, and that's so frustrating, isn't it, Michael? Because one keeps on walking into the lamppost, as it were, with that one. Yeah, I know that feeling. Yes, and it's often only by doing too much that one realizes, oops, that was the limit there, and I've gone past it. Yeah. Because it's quite hard to define, the limits. It's like, isn't it, when you think about it?
Especially in this community where the limits seem to go wonky, right? Sometimes your limits are farther than they are.
Yeah, and different people having different limits. Sometimes I don't understand why one time I do something with ease, so walking up some stairs, and other times it's much harder. That frustrates me, But again, zoom that camera out and reflect on that. There's nothing to be gained by chewing down on it too hard.
Yeah. Molly's reminding me what they say. They say, don't quit, adapt. Right. But also, and because she said that, now I'm remembering it's little by little by little. That's what he says. He says, as you're getting back into working out, little by little by little.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, again, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes. Yeah.
But that's true of any fitness program, really, isn't it? If you're trying to get fitter,
Mm.
don't go too fast too quickly.
In my experience, when you're trying to get fit, it's not so much getting exercise in on a regular basis, it's the lifestyle that you have to adopt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you mean? Say more about that. So it becomes a
Well,
priority. You mean?
it's not up again. It's if you're going to be fit, your fitness levels will decrease in 2 weeks, right? So you have to stay fit. If you're going to stay fit, you have to continue to be fit. And so your lifestyle has to revolve around the things that you would do. Are you going to brush your teeth? Are you going to go for a run? Are you going to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner? It's a lifestyle that you adopt. And if you are the kind of person that likes to regiment your day, that becomes a super easy thing.
Mm.
You just block it out, you go and you do it, you treat it like a job, you treat it like it's not a hobby, it's not something you're doing for fun. You're doing it because it's something you have to do.
Yes. That's an
Um,
interesting point as well, that some people can regiment their day better than others.
Self discipline. This is one of those things. Um, there is no there is no better motivation than the results that you get in building up your own health. So
Mm.
nobody's going to help you with it. I mean, sure, you can get a physical trainer and they might say things like, come on, two more, come on, two more, one more. And they might push you. You go, 2 more minutes, come on, 2 more minutes on the treadmill. But you have to be able to turn that part of your brain off that says, I hate this. I hate going here. I hate having to get dressed in the morning. You have to turn that part of your brain right off. Just don't want to hear it. Yeah.
That's another form of the kind of all alone,
Mm-hmm.
all one. I mean, yes, because you're finding that within yourself. And it's also that question, do you really need the personal trainer, to be paying all of that money to say,
Mm-hmm.
2 more minutes or two more?
I mean, in my
Okay.
experience, a personal trainer is for the people that have very limited time and they don't have any experience in a gymnasium or any workout routines at all. And, having a coach, if you've never played organized sports, there's something to be said to having somebody kind of help push you along, guide you, and get you to where you want to go and take a bunch of, you're compressing time when somebody coaches you. You're not having to learn everything. You're not having to relearn anything that you've done wrong. You get good
Mm.
form. There's a lot of value there. But the most important thing is, how much time do you have? Because if you're very limited on time, you want an impactful workout. You need to find somebody who knows how to handle this, keep all of the records together for you, track your progress, the whole nine.
Yeah.
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 And then for those of you that are fitness minded, remember it's like, I don't know, it's like 30% exercise and 70% nutrition. So
Interesting.
Natalie says, so true. It's hard to figure out our new limits. It is a great personal challenge to slow down, not rush, when most of the things happening around you is so quick and rushed. Quite a personal development. Molly says, when you overdo it, you'll know. And she's got a bunch of laughy faces here. I walked 6 miles with hills and summer sun 3 months out. I started to wonder if a helicopter could land. I haven't walked 6 miles since. So this is
Yeah,
another
and
one.
that's a scary feeling. I
Uh,
know that feeling I may have said this already. I once played paddle and quite energetically, and I used to play a lot of squash, so I have the technique, but I didn't wasn't particularly conscious of running it around very much because you don't paddle's a small court. But what I've always found was when I stopped that and I'd still like to get to the bottom of why that is. I don't fully understand that, but it's when in the stopping that I began to feel really strange. Um, and yeah, it's scary.
mm. Natalie says, swimming against the current. Slow, slow, slow. I can do this. That's it.
Yeah, but also we're also swimming against the current of a world that is going ever faster, and the pressures we all have to kind of keep up with that. And again, that's very hard to quantify, but it's out there and it's getting faster.
Mm-hmm. It is getting faster.
and that we have to be, we're somehow kind of efficient in achieving all of these things through digital technology.
Yeah. So Molly walking 6 miles 3 months out. This is a thing that we see. We see people really push themselves in a situation where they should be taking it easy. Aortic Kitchen's chef Rob, he walked up a mountain 3 months out as a way to prove to himself that he could still do the things that he likes to do. And when he was
Yeah, well,
telling
it's that's often what's inside it, isn't it? It's again that thing of I want to show myself that I'm the same and I can do this.
yeah, and we don't want you to push in any way early on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I may have mentioned this as well, but in previous episodes that I saw someone on Instagram who had the condition, and he was posting all the time about how much weightlifting he was doing, and I just had to private message him after a while and said, you're a car crash waiting to happen. Basically, you just had this surgery, and you're trying to go for PBs in your weightlifting. Have you? It's like, what have you learned?
And that's another thing. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Dr. Prakash is going to have coming out of University of Texas Houston. I think that's where he's at. He's with the John Ritter Research Program, and he had this big study. There's a bunch of people in our community that went down there and documented their workouts. They followed them for about a year. Most of the content that we see is generated for people that are mid 60s and above, and so we don't know. One of my favorite things that Dr. Udelman out of Maimonides said is this is the first generation of survivors we can actually study. And there's nothing more interesting than knowing, like the doctors are paying attention and they're gathering this information so that they can better serve everybody.
Yeah.
But then this condition is so wildly different from patient to patient.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do know people who kind of, one was a rugby referee who, wasn't probably a year out and was back kind of refereeing matches and things like that. I mean, it just amazed me. So it is different, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the other important thing, the other side of exercise is that capacity to relax as well and do nothing, read a book, sit down. Well, what just a great way to keep that blood pressure nice and calm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people that believes that exercise is the best antidepressant.
But so can, the pleasure be so can the pleasure of reading a book be. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's a great way of kind of doing something but kind of nothing, if you see what I mean.
Oh, it turns out, John, that not everybody can visualize when they read. Have you heard of this study? The question is,
I think so, yes.
If I ask you to picture an apple in your mind, do you see an apple? And some people see a very crisp, clear apple. And then by grades of invisibility, some people see it a little bit more translucent. Some people see it kind of, and some people see nothing. And so some people, when they read a book, they don't get the movie playing in their heads.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and that's also one of the interesting things of what you say about degrees of invisibility. Nice title for a book, by the way.
It's a band name.
When we lose a loved one or someone we know, and we visualize them, there can be that. I used to hate this as a child, that you can't quite grab them clearly enough, or I couldn't. They're almost their image is ghostly.
It does. There was a time limit for facial memory that I once read about.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yes. And also if, for example, one has a child or a daughter who can really draw, sometimes I'm just blown away by how did you manage to look at that and then just draw that so accurately? We've lost you to your research, yes?
I'm just trying to make sure I've got this correct. So, like your family and close personal family, you might have long term, days, weeks, or indefinite, but pretty much everyone else is inside of those weeks.
Mm.
Like you just, if you're not used to what their face looks like, you see faces everywhere. So, that becomes a bombardment of memory. So then you're like, well, I know him. I know his face because he reminds me of so and so. But then now you're thinking of so and now you're not sure what the other person looked like. and, then the memory just goes away or fades.
Mm.
Yeah. And, what I found, because I remember reading about this in college, so this is forever away. And I'd mentioned in class in a
I
joking.
just thought you were fresh out of college, Joshua. I didn't
Yeah,
realize
right. I quipped into the class. I was like, oh, so that's the mechanism our bodies give us to forget ex-girlfriends. So it went over like a fart in church then too.
Mm.
I laughed. I still laugh today. So, any other cures for solitary loneliness? Balms, maybe?
What did you say?
Any other advice for solitary or loneliness?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there isn't some kind of magic wand. There isn't some sort of, and that's part of the risk. That we overreach for distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if does it make you less lonely by maybe scrolling through your Instagram account or whatever?
Oh,
Well,
that's a
maybe,
fascinating question.
maybe there can be distraction there, certainly, and it can alleviate some stress just by looking at some images. But at the same time, in certain cases, it can amplify feelings of isolation and loneliness, as certainly it would appear to be emerging in, risks to adolescence,
Mm-hmm.
so on. So, I mean, it is it does also test the quality of our relationships with other people, doesn't it? This condition. Who
It,
can I really talk to about this?
mm-hmm.
Who 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 really says more than "Are you okay?"
Mm-hmm.
Those very difficult three words. I don't particularly respond well when people ask me that. It always seems quite kind of. It's not, it's a bit lazy. I find it a bit lazy. But it's very safe, isn't it? And does the other person really want to know anyway? But there has to be a lot of trust, doesn't there,
Mm-hmm.
in kind of reaching out to people and talking about the isolation. And perhaps sometimes we expect too much of others.
Perhaps.
We expect
Um,
too much of a caregiver, or we expect too much of a relationship, and it puts a stress on the relationship.
mm-hmm.
I was going to say something there that's gone out of my mind. Which is why the being all one within being alone is so important, because it comes back to resilience. Great to have other people around us, but we can't overuse them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We also have to respect their boundaries.
And this is a good push for the support groups. If you're an aortic dissection survivor or somebody living with aortic disease, being able to talk to somebody who's been on the path is a huge, huge impact. One of the compounding natures of isolation is the fact that nobody knows what you're talking about. You just feel like you're saying words and you're not being heard or not being understood.
Yeah.
And very often, like you were saying, the fatigue of having to repeat yourself on how are you doing? Wow, this is a big subject. How much time do you
Yeah, and
have?
I'm sure don't we have that kind of almost like the speech in our head of talking about the condition, of saying what happened, and it can be like, it can sound so tedious even to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. There's got to
And
be some frustration there.
yes, and I'm not particularly a person who what is it that I necessarily I can feel quite self-conscious about sort of sharing all of that because I don't know, a lot of it feels very intimate.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know that that person will how they. I have a sense of who. I remember once being told, "Be careful who you share with,"
Mm.
because there's nothing worse than kind of sharing and not, and not being received in the way we may want it to be.
In the early stages there, did you find it hard to get out into the world?
Um, well, of course, this happened to me in London, and that's where I was operated on, and then I couldn't come back to Spain where my family was for about 3 months.
Mm.
Um, I remember just coming out of hospital and walking across a busy London road was a fairly terrifying experience. It's like my confidence in kind of spatial awareness being out there in the world was totally gone. Um, did I? Yeah, I think I probably did, but that was more a kind of factor of, I think, of tiredness, a factor of energy,
Fatigue. Mm-hmm.
um, fatigue.
Healing.
Yes,
Healing's got to be an exhausting thing.
yes, and I mean there is an incredible amount of healing going on.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to the first time I went to the cinema, and that would have been about probably 5 months out. I found it really hard to tolerate the Dolby sound.
Mm.
And I had to kind of, did I leave? I think I probably left, yes. Or
And you
um,
love cinema.
I love cinema, and it was a Bond film,
Ah,
you know.
sacrilege.
So, you know, I didn't feel particularly Bond-like doing that.
Mm.
Um, so yes, and I think in a way one becomes concerned that you're more of a fragile person than you were, and everybody's looking at you as being fragile, and maybe in that kind of social interaction in a bigger group, people know, but they're not saying anything to you. They know what they've heard, what you've been through, but nobody really. Some people have that great capacity, as I'm sure we all know, just to completely ignore the issue, pretend this
Mm.
never happened, as
Yes.
that their way of coping.
Molly says she's got a circle with a cross through it and it says loud noises, just no loud noises.
Yeah, it's interesting, Molly, isn't it? Yeah, and why exactly that is, and yeah, and I remember going to a on a trip to the US sometime afterwards, being taken. It wasn't my choice, but to a Justin Bieber concert.
Do
Just
tell.
that was more of a kind of something for my a treat for my children, which was bought by somebody else.
Oh, it's
But
a
I
treat
just
for
couldn't.
me too.
I just couldn't tolerate the volume.
Mm.
I just couldn't. Yeah. Mm.
So you've had to fly back to Spain from London.
Yes, I was.
Was that
Well, I
challenging for
didn't.
you?
I wasn't. I didn't fly back alone that
Mm-hmm.
time. And when I was ready to go, I had company, obviously. Um, yeah, I can't actually remember whether that felt strange or not, really. But you're
But
smiling.
yeah, Molly is. I promise she's not laughing at you, but she says Justin Bieber, and I want to say there's like 8 exclamation points.
Yeah,
Hello, Catherine. Catherine Dunno has joined us, and she says, I'm a teacher, and kids rushing in the hallway still really bothers me after 2 years.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I wonder whether that's something to do with um, that we sort of lose. We also lose some sort of confidence in situations which are a bit random and that we can't control. Perhaps where things and sound can be very like that. As I've said before, how we respond to sound is very primal. I think what is threat,
Mm.
in sound, and I think I've talked about this before that it, if you watch a baby or a very young child, and they suddenly hear a random sound, you can see they react straight away with kind of fear. And it may not be a sound that they need to be afraid of, but they haven't learned that yet. So they react with fear. I do believe that's quite primal.
Okay.
But I'm not quite sure why sound can become so troubling to us afterwards.
That's a good question. It's a very good question. Catherine says, absolutely correct. We have quite a number of teachers in the community. Like, there's like we don't have very many solid groups of specific skill sets, and yet we have teachers that number in there's 8 or 9 teachers. And it's almost to the point when somebody comes in new to the support groups and we're like, and so, what did you do before this? And if somebody says that they're a teacher, you can see everybody going, of course you're a teacher.
So maybe we have an aortic school or something.
Yeah.
Aortic classes.
It's very interesting. It makes me wonder, how many people are in a high stress job and how stressful is it to present to, 30, they're children. So they're barely people, they're still growing into people. You never know what you're going to get there. And is there a stress in a certain number of students that we don't know about that exasperates things, right? For example, what if, class sizes were only 20 kids and 20 kids was way less stress than 25 kids, way less stress than 30,
Well, I would argue there anyway, watch the quality of the education take off if you have smaller class sizes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why when people pay for private education, the class sizes are smaller.
Yeah.
More attention for the child. But of course, because teaching a class has such a strong element of performance in it, and when there are children, we are expected to lead, aren't we? And we're like, and you can't expect the child to come and take care of the sound for you or something like that. So we can maybe feel that we have to dig deeper for our resilience in those kind of situations.
Natalie says, for me, it's light as well. Difficulty tolerating bright light.
Yeah.
Catherine says, it's not the children, it's the adults.
Yes, it's those fellow colleagues. Yeah, all the politics.
Or the helicopter parents, right?
Yeah.
And then, so Molly says, bright light, loud noises, fast movements, hot temperatures. No.
Yeah.
So she's not going to Coachella anytime soon.
Did she say hot temperatures?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. Because I'm sort of wondering whether one of my latest developments is I have less tolerance of cold. I mean, I'm from Northern Europe, so being in southern Spain is testing when it's kind of 40 degrees centigrade. Sorry, I don't know off the cuff what that is in US Fahrenheit.
It's around 96 or so.
Even though I was brought up with imperial measures, I'm now a metric boy. But I've noticed that I'm certainly not tolerating the cold as well as I did. And of course, cold isn't great. It's warmth is better for this condition, because when you're warmer, it's like the aortic analogy with plumbing. The pipes are going to be more relaxed, and the blood pressure will be less. And blood pressure tends to go up when we're cold because everything's kind of tightening up.
I'm pretty sure that we've heard not to get into too hot temperatures in hot tubs. You still have to keep that below a certain number. I don't know. I think the standard hot tub is 103, and if you have this condition, you want to do this at 97 or something. You just don't want to take it up to the higher temperatures. Natalie says it would be.
I certainly wouldn't advocate the whole kind of sauna thing of going to really hot sauna and then diving into a cold ice bath. don't want to be shocking. If I've noticed even when I get into cold swimming pools, I kind of am a bit wary of how that feels on the valve and whether that makes my valve jump, which it does sometimes. Why do it? I kind of,
Interesting. So what
I'm
you
not
want,
planning any time soon and going rolling in the snow in Norway,
yeah. So what you want is a perfectly temperature controlled water treadmill thing,
Yes, please.
right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, if you could arrange that for me, that would be good.
I might figure something out.
Yeah.
Natalie says it would be interesting to know the groups: teacher, cooks, office work, etc. And she's acknowledging Molly's list.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Let me check for any anonymous questions here. Nope. Everybody's happy to share out in the open. Love to see it. When caregivers are involved, keeping on the stance of isolation, they also have a tendency to be isolated from the rest of the extended family. Once again, it's the same situation where, a brother or a sister or a brother-in-law or a sister-in-law may not believe what's happening. And that is a huge blow to confidence. And even more frustrating than that is when you find out that if you have this, your first layer of relatives, so if, your parents, your siblings, and your children are all at a 50% chance of having this, and the amount of people that are in the realm of ignorance is bliss and there's nothing wrong with me. This is definitely one of those situations where ignorance is not bliss.
I've certainly noticed that when you tell people, that it's likely because there's elements of Marfan in my condition that they could go get cousins and things to get themselves checked out. Some people deal with it very differently to others. Some
Very
people just go straight away to denial. Oh, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
People cope with that differently, don't they? It's difficult to kind of comment on individual caregiver, care receiver relationships because so much, I think, will depend on the nature of that relationship in the first place, and the nature of the family, and the dynamics of the family, and how authentic that is, and how much honesty there is. It would, my first base for me there would be if a caregiver is not really recognizing the nature of the problem, that there's going to be a lot of denial there. And denial comes from fear, essentially.
Yeah.
Again, of not wanting to face the reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I said at the top, it's by facing the reality that we start to build the resilience. But it is a very difficult on past that where, I imagine if the caregiver doesn't really believe you, how could one not feel isolated in that condition? And the work there really is, if those two people were in therapy, the work there is to explore that dynamic between them.
And this goes back to
what's it giving the caregiver to take up that particular position? What kind of what's inside that for them?
There is a stress of, from the male side, the stress of not being able to provide for the family. From the wife or female side, there's the stress of having to take on responsibilities that the husband was doing before. And it's weird how the toll takes, right? For example, some women are like, I haven't had to tend the lawn in 15 years, and now I have to remember to go outside and I have to do this lawn work, and it's like, I didn't sign up for that, and there's that bit of life's not fair, that starts to build up.
Yeah, and in relationships, resentment isn't sexy.
And and then there's the male side again, the not being able to protect your family the way you used to. That's another one we've heard.
Yes.
I want to say the quote.
Difficult, and of course, and very, very valid, because I'd say one of the major tsunamis out of serious illness, and can be cancer as well, is financial.
Oh yeah,
It
provide.
can turn everything on its head, and that can absolutely be a bomb going off in the family and put strains in all kinds of directions. Maybe you have to make cutbacks in loads of kind of ways, and it can become a slippery path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a system in the country which gives people a kind of safety net of kind of social security and
Mm-hmm.
affordable healthcare and um, you know disability compensations and things like that, people can lose everything, their
Mm-hmm.
houses and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. Devastation.
And that can be, again, very, very isolating, not easy.
Mm-hmm.
But it will test, won't it? It'll test, again, it always tests the quality of those relationships. It'll always test what's essentially happening in that family, how we deal with any setbacks in life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, we're in
And it's,
the final 10 minutes. Did you want to summarize some stuff here? I don't know if you
let
have
me
a
just
summary in front of you.
just this is one sort of one I didn't make earlier. Um, so in that word, all one, alone, all alone, but all one. It's that idea as well that you are enough.
Mm-hmm.
You are enough as you are. Yes. And that can be a kind of mantra, repetition. I am enough. I am enough. The key points are accepting the reality of where I am, accepting the reality of where we are, noting the power of perception within that word alone. Do I ruminate on my aloneness and that brings me down even further? Or do I say, no, I am enough. I move on from here. The key goal being about building resilience, because that's what we need. And to be cautious of spending a lot of time lamenting what there was, what's gone, because it is gone. I'm sorry, but it is gone. Learning to cope and fight one's battles. And by doing that, that's another kind of core work. The more you kind of cope with the day, the more you kind of cope with the hour, the more your confidence and your resilience will grow. Being also cautious of not putting too much weight on the constant drag of wishing you get support from others, because that can end up being very disappointing. That can cause a lot of tension within those kind of relationships. Again, no one's going to solve it for us.
Mm-hmm.
There is a limit how much we can pull on others. And we are there in the classic human dilemma of facing our individuality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that we are alone, but we are enough to be alone.
Gotcha. Natalie says, "Oh, this is such a great discussion. We don't hear much about that in the support groups. It's taboo. But it's the big elephant in the room. You get into this survivor life with whatever dynamic was there before, and it's not simple." Referring to caregiver and survivor dynamics. Yeah.
So what I'd like to know more about what's taboo. Talking about the difficulties, or
Oh, I'm not sure. The support groups, you never know what people are going to talk about, to be honest. Natalie's still
Mm.
quite new to the community.
Okay.
Sometimes topics pop off. Sometimes, a lot of times it's my medication does this. Does anybody feel this way? Or, if I sleep on my
Mm.
side, these things happen. Or, pump head stories or references to not being able to remember things. I mean, it's wild and it's varied, and you never know what the conversations are going to be about.
Mm.
But she's right. It is pretty rare that they talk about, their caregivers or things of that nature. And that's another one of those tricky things when we were talking about the variance of this ordeal. If somebody's skeptical at all and then they join a support group and they see people that are at work and they see people that are not at work, the variance is huge again. And
Mm.
so, well, why can't you be like so and so or check out so and so? They're able to do these things, and it's such an individual case by case situation.
Yeah, and comparisons are the road to hell.
Oh, I love that statement. Yeah, they are.
Mm.
They
Oh yeah,
are.
they lead to really negative emotions like envy, self-criticism. Again, a sense of insufficiency, of not being enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, self-crimination. And then
Yeah.
there is the concept of caregiver fatigue, right?
Hmm.
And this is where the caregiver, especially in some of the more trying circumstances, they stop paying attention to themselves, right? So now they're sharing once every few days instead of a regular routine. They're not paying attention to their own, physical health, so they're being a bit of a
Mm.
slob. The priority of keeping the kitchen kind of, clean and whatnot is less of a priority because you're just filling your day up with other things, and it just piles on and piles on. And then the
Mm.
caregiver starts to feel a bit numb, and then that's terrible. And it's a
Yeah.
phase. It's a phase like anything else. It's like working any muscle.
Mm.
You just gotta give that little
Well,
bit,
well, well,
you know.
caregiving begins with self-care, doesn't it? You
Mm-hmm.
can't really care for somebody else again unless you're resilient in yourself,
Yeah.
and have that strength.
Yeah.
Mm. Yes, plenty. Again, it's all about the individual stories, though, isn't it? Because it's everybody's different, and
Yeah. This condition
it's a
is
different
wild.
experience for everybody. And as I say, it is all about the dynamics of those interpersonal relationships.
Yeah. And Natalie says yes, talking about the difficulties. Molly says, "Thank you so much, John, for bringing such relevant topics and conversations that pertain to this group." Smiley face.
Thank you very much, Molly. And no more 6 mile walks, please, in the baking heat.
Blazing
Think
sun. Yeah.
slap on wrist there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Those of you that signed up to hang out with us tonight at Bingo, Valentine's Day Bingo, 7 p.m. We
Oh
look,
wow.
yeah, we look forward to having you guys. 10 games, 10 prizes. I'll be sending out another link to sign up here shortly after the show. Do you want to do the like and subscribe thing, or do you want me to do the like and subscribe thing?
We can do it together
You
if you
ready?
like.
Do you want to do the
I'll say
like
like.
and I do subscribe? Okay, you go.
Like and
Subscribe. We'll see you
very
soon.
good. What a comedy routine. Okay.